May we purify an ocean of worlds. May we free an ocean of beings. May we see an ocean of Dharma. May we realize an ocean of wisdom. May we purify an ocean of activities. May we fulfill an ocean of aspirations. May we make offerings to an ocean of Buddhas. May we practice without discouragement for an ocean of eons. So tonight I want to speak about mastering the Dharmas, right? That third of the 4 Bodhisattva vows. And I've shared with you that I've worked for many years with a mother and son team. I've been teaching him and by extension her, but she really asked me for him originally about Buddhism. And we've been working together since he was about 3 in what was Zen Kids at the monastery, the Zen Kids program. And he's now a teenager. That means he's old enough to really grapple with the Dharma, right? To really work, to make sense of it, so he can use it. So he can use it in his life. And so not long ago, I asked them to rewrite the 4 vows, making them relatable and actionable, and simple enough for anyone to understand who might not have any knowledge of Buddhism. And they did a beautiful job, such a good job that I thought we should do this too. We should do this too, immerse ourselves in these vows and translate them, as it were, chew them, digest them, so that we can express them in a new way, in a personal way. And so I thought we could do the same. I also thought, of course, to just go in order, working through these vows properly, systematically. But I've been thinking a lot about this 3rd vow. And I've been wanting to talk about it. And so here we are. The Dharmas are boundless. I vow to master them. Thich Nhat Hanh translates this vow as, however immeasurable the Dharmas are, I vow to explore them deeply. Would somebody type these into the chat, please? So the first one is, the Dharmas are boundless. I vow to master them. Thich Nhat Hanh, however immeasurable the Dharmas are, I vow to explore them deeply. Robert Aiken, Dharma gates are countless. I vow to wake to them.
Zuisei?
Yes.
Okay, so we're all doing it together. Okay, great. Because I only got the first one. From there on, I missed it.
Thank you. Thanks, Nina. So Dharma doors are countless. I vow to wake to them.
Did I get that right? Dharma doors are countless? Sorry.
Dharma gates, but doors works.
Okay, I'll put gates. If he put gates, we're putting gates. Okay.
And Joan Halifax Roshi of Upaya Zen Center, reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. And so we took these iterations and we talk about what mastering means, right? Especially since we're not talking about knowledge or information, right? So let's remember this. We talked about what it means to wake to a Dharma gate. I mean, what is a Dharma gate? How do you pass from ignorance to wisdom, from blindness to seeing? And we struggled a little bit to understand what it means for reality to have no edges, right? Kind of like the universe, but bigger. I was reading an article the other day about how difficult it is for us to understand the size of our universe. And you start small, which is, you know, the distance from here to the moon, which was something like 34 Earths, something like that. And it just kept getting progressively larger and larger. I mean, it just blows your mind. And so, you know, we say dharmas are boundless, and that just sounds, I mean, it sounds nice. But what is that? For something to be boundless, for me to be boundless, what is that? And then, you know, as we spend some time with this, you know, they came up really with their own version of this vow. I vow to learn from all that can teach me, which I thought was both very simple and very beautiful. I vow to learn from all that can teach me. And so we're really taking that mastering and turning it around. So really it's us, right? It's each one of us that's mastered by the Dharmas, that's taught by the Dharmas, that's woken up by the Dharmas. And just in case, what are Dharmas? Things. All things. And so it's a little bit like Dogen saying, to study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be enlightened by the 10,000 things. How do you become enlightened? By your dishwasher. By that argument you just had with your son, with your partner. How do you become enlightened? By a moon, by pain, by death. And so, you know, if we trace that back a little bit, we could say that dharmas are boundless. I vow to be taught by them. And then, of course, the question becomes how? How do we let ourselves be open to being taught? First of all, we just have to let go of the veil that separates us from all these dharmas. Because I'm not actually going to master them. The mastering is mutual. And it's not really something that I can do. It really is something that I can only allow it. I can only practice it. The paradox that we've spoken of so many times in practice. There is practice. And at a certain point, you just have to trust and let go. And that is so hard, especially if you're used to doing. It is so hard to trust that you don't have to be on top of things, on top of yourself, on top of practice. Our language is so completely tied into our perception of the world and of ourselves, of course. And it's tied to our need to control it, right? We think master and we think power. We think dominion. We think that's good. And by implication, we think of a self, right? We think of me. I'm the master of those dharmas. I will realize myself. I will be victorious. Or that stage that we all go through, which I've mentioned recently. You start to practice and you start to feel good and you start to realize, there's something happening. And then you start to look at everybody else and think, oh my God, those poor schmucks. They don't know. They don't know. They're just mired in samsara. And we have to go through that. We have to go through that stage, I think. Because in itself, there's nothing wrong with it. There's a little bit of a kind of pride, but I think there's also an appreciation. There is something happening that wasn't happening before. And if we can stay focused on that, then we can really care for what is happening. We can really take care as we walk our own path. And then we notice when we're separating from others, from dharmas, and then we move to bring them close. We let go of self, we forget the self to let ourselves be enlightened by others, enlightened by dharmas. It is so different from the mode that is encouraged, rewarded in most of the ways that we work in our society. We're taught to work hard, to get ahead, to be sharp. And then we encounter the Dharma and we realize, but that's not how it works. And then soon we start to think, well, why can't I do this? Why am I not understanding this? Why am I not getting it? Why am I stuck? Why is this so difficult? Does it have to be so difficult? It doesn't have to be so difficult. And that feeling of stuckness is just a perception. If there is nothing to fight against, there's nothing to be stuck with. There is seeing and not yet seeing. And someone said to me, can't we just love one another? Not think about all this stuff. That would be great if we could just do that. It would be even better if we could do it all the time. But that's hard. And also hard is for us to understand that this part, this thing about mastering the dharmas is really about learning how to love. We don't study these texts just so we have more Buddhist information, so that we can make conversation at a party. We're studying these texts, we do koans, so that we can get closer. Right? So we can get closer to our breath, to the Dharma in front of us, so that we can see that doing that and loving deeply, boundlessly, aren't different things. We study, we sit, we do liturgy, we practice the precepts so that we can love better and more. That's it. I mean, that really is it. And so if you start to get lost in what are admittedly some difficult concepts, oneness, suchness, the absolute, non-duality, just remember that, come back to that. The reason we are studying this is so we can love, so we can learn how to love, so we can remember how to love. So that we can ask ourselves, and just check, are we living oneness? Do we trust oneness? Can we see that realizing oneness is probably the most important thing any of us will ever do with this one precious life? My teacher Dada Roshi would say this often. Waking up is the most important thing we can each do with our lives. I agree. I agree. I vow to learn from all that can teach me, which is everything. Everything teaches all of the time. We might see it, we might not, we might get it, the teaching or not, but everything teaches always. Which brings me to these talks. Because you know how sometimes I'll say something and one of you might come to me afterward and ask, were you talking to me? And the way I see it, there are 4 possibilities. I'm offering a teaching that seems to land squarely where you're sitting. And you think that I am talking to you. Either it's true, I am talking to you, or it's not true. But because maybe you tend to take things personally, maybe you doubt yourself, or maybe you're used to centering experience, you think you're the one I'm talking about. On the other hand, if I say something and you don't think it applies to you at all, again, there are 2 possibilities. It's true, I wasn't thinking of you when I was offering that particular teaching, or it's not true. I am indeed talking to you, but you just missed it. Now, how do you proceed with each of these possibilities? In exactly the same way, one way. Let them teach you. In other words, investigate. Forget about whether I am talking to you or not, specifically, and just ask yourself, is this true? This teaching, is it relevant? Do I see it in my life? If I don't see it, am I missing something? What can I learn here? This is the most important point. What can I learn here? If frustration is coming up, what can I learn here? If pride is coming up, if impatience is coming up, if confusion is coming up, what can I learn here? Because you realize if that's your approach, you can't lose. You can't lose. There is nothing in the whole wide world that cannot wake us up. And so instead of getting frustrated when we don't see, instead of getting caught in the content of our thoughts, we investigate the suchness of those thoughts, the fact that they are there. Oh, what is this? We investigate, I don't understand. We investigate, who is this I that doesn't understand? And then we can't lose. Because we're talking about Anyuttara Samyak Sambodhi, complete liberation, after all. Barring that, we're talking about transforming our lives. So why would we ever think we're just going to read one book or 2 or 30 and just get it? I mean, we think it because that's how we do everything else in our lives. That's what we've learned. You know, if I study hard, I do my homework, I take the exam, I'll eventually graduate from this program. If I read the manual, if I follow the instructions, I can put this TV console together. I mean, you know, how hard can it be? But the Dharma isn't like that. Certainly forgetting the self is not like that. I mean, it's the opposite of that, if it's anything at all. So liberation isn't something we graduate into. It's not something we assemble, you know, take a piece of a teaching over here, paste a teaching from over there. And it is not something that anyone can give you. We uncover it, mostly little by little. Every once in a while, we get a big chunk, you know, something that just kind of rips off your eyelids, like Bodhidharma. You know why Bodhidharma is painted like that? You know, Bodhidharma, if you don't know, was a semi-legendary figure. First Chinese ancestor. He was said to bring Zen from India to China. And in paintings, he looks very much like a pirate. Bald head, big beard, hoop earrings, and these huge bulging eyes. And the story goes that he went to Shaolin Monastery and that he sat for 9 years facing the wall. And because he was struggling to stay awake, he just ripped off his eyelids at one point. And on the place where they fell, tea plants grew. And that's why Zen monks drink green tea, to stay awake. Now, what is true is that we inherited that wall gazing from Bodhidharma. In the only text that's attributed to him, it's called the 2 Entrances and 4 Practices. And the 4 practices he actually took from the 4 foundations of mindfulness and then just massaged them a little bit. But he talks about wall gazing, and he says, those who turn from delusion back to reality, who meditate on walls, the absence of self and other, the oneness of ordinary person and sage, and who remain unmoved even by scriptures, are in complete and unspoken agreement with reason. I mean, essentially, those who don't get caught up in words, those who don't separate themselves, judge themselves, put themselves down, put themselves up, they're in complete, unspoken agreement, not just with reason, but with reality. And this wall gazing in a Zen monastery or Zen temple, normally you actually sit facing the wall. It's one way to express that aloneness in Zazen, you're all oneness. It's a way to very concretely turn your attention inward instead of outward, right where we usually place it. And even then, think of how much time we spend thinking about others when we're sitting there quietly and alone. You know, we travel to distant countries. We travel in time. We go to the past. We go to the future. We have whole conversations. We have meals. We watch movies, all in this little 2x3 piece of fabric. It's kind of crazy, no? That the mind can do that, and that we choose to do that. You know, someone said we'd never pay to watch a bad movie over and over and over again. But we do exactly that willingly. Well, we don't pay, but well, sometimes we do. Sometimes we do pay. And then we sit down and watch a bad movie over and over and over again. But of course, if it was just like that, if it was all like that, no one would stay. You know, nobody would do this. And so we face that wall, trusting that we can face ourselves, trusting that this is how we learn from all that can teach us, which really is everything. So